Hi friends, we're going to go over the last two slides that we did for our first part of the blue and the gray. Disc 1, Part A and Part B. Okay, so some of this we saw already a little bit ago. We saw that James was too young to enlist in the army. And what does he do instead? Without actually lying, he writes it on a piece of paper and puts it in his boot, and then he says, "I stand on my statement," because he was physically standing on it, so it's kind of funny. And they would sometimes lie just to say they were over 18 because they wanted to join and be a part of it. So it's kind of interesting. John's friend Jonah Steele is a bodyguard for who? Abraham Lincoln. We saw that in the first part. What happened to James shortly after he joins the army? He dies from dysentery, which is a disease that killed more soldiers in the Civil War than the actual battles themselves. It's basically a stomach disease. It's pretty gross, actually. If you look it up, it's kind of gross. What happened to soldiers that were caught running from a battle? They were branded as a coward. So you saw the one soldier get the C branded on him, and then he was discharged from the army, meaning he was sent home. Okay. The fact or fiction piece is just kind of for fun. But sometimes with historical fiction, it's hard to know like who was actually a fictional character and who was real. Jonas and John were very fictional. They were not part of the Civil War. John Brown was a real person, so his character is real. Sergeant O'Toole is fictional. Abraham Lincoln is obviously real. General McClellan is real. The old woman who died at Bull Run, you saw her in her house, and then her house was like exploded during the battle, and you see Jonas recover her body later on. She was actually real, which I just learned this recently too. Mrs. Bryan was telling me this. And she found it online that her name was actually Judith Henry. So she was real. And she really did die in the Battle of Bull Run. And then the other person who is actually real is Christopher Spencer. So Mr. Spencer, the one who developed the new weapon technology that Abraham Lincoln was testing out, that new rifle, where they don't have to reload it every time they want to shoot. He is real. So he really did have Abraham Lincoln test out his weaponry and stuff like that. So that's kind of cool. The other thing, were there really spectators who came to watch the Battle of Bull Run? So Kathy was part of that in the movie, the senators and Congress people, and they really did travel. They traveled about 20 miles from Washington to watch the battle. A lot of them brought picnic baskets and food and stuff like that so they could use it as almost like a form of entertainment, which now just seems so strange because we would never do that. Obviously, that specific battle didn't go super well, and some of those people ended up getting hurt, but it's kind of interesting that some of those wealthier people used parts of the war as forms of entertainment. Then slide 17, I have a true or false question. President Lincoln kept a file in his office of death threats that he titled assassination, and that is true. So that's just kind of interesting. People sending him those types of threats, he kept all of them, which is super interesting. And then on the timeline, if you look at around November 1860, Lincoln gets elected, and then John's brothers are very excited about South Carolina leaving the Union, if you remember that. They were all pumped up when they heard that certain other states were seceding, and they were sure that Virginia would secede, and that is what happened. So they were very excited and ready to fight for the South. Over on the right-hand side, I just have some statistics for you. So looking at some of the battles, so you know how many casualties there were and things like that. So Fort Sumter was a Confederate victory. So they are the ones that won. 580 forces engaged, no one killed. So that's good to know. Wounded, missing, or captured. So Fort Sumter was a fairly good battle. Bull Run, that big one, the kind of really crazy one that we saw in the video, was a Confederate victory as well. 60,000 forces engaged, so a lot. 460 Union deaths and 387 Confederate deaths. Just over 1,100 Union wounded soldiers, and then just over 1,500 Confederate wounded soldiers. There were 1,300 Union missing and captured, and 13 Confederate missing and captured. So a lot of times they don't recover exactly who has died and things like that, so they are accounted for as missing.